Hi, everyone. I am Chris Alexander from Red Queen Consulting. This is Wednesday evening performance talks. Tonight, we're going to talk about team charters and working agreements, or whatever you choose to call them. Going back to our mental models and our operating models discussion, whatever you want to call it, up to you. All right, let's jump right in. All right, quick review of material we previously covered. We discussed the team performance drivers and the team effectiveness drivers, as well as team distinctions. This was in an earlier chapter. The importance being that we need all these things to help teams perform well. It's not just frameworks, it's not just tools. Those are important, but they are a very small subset of all the effectiveness drivers that we need to make teams successful and to drive them closer to high performance. Among that, we also talked about the importance of mental models, not in overall like big picture strategy, but just in the sense that mental models are mental representations of the world and how things work and how they're supposed to work. And so one of the components in how effectively the team can work together is how similarly our mental models are for how the work is supposed to get done. Not necessarily what's right, what the answer is, but how we work together. This is an important distinction. Dave Snowden mentioned some challenges he has with the mental models conception. I generally agree with what he has said, but I think the distinction is the mental models that we're talking about are really tactically execution based. So how do we communicate, monitor, update, status of work, plan, execute, debrief in tactical task performance? Not how do we build strategy together? How do we think of the world? How do we envision the market or customers? Like those are certainly, yes, very big mental models. I think if I'm understanding what Dave Snowden's point was, relying on those big mental models and assuming they are correct and fixed is extremely problematic, if not outright wrong. And I completely agree with that. We need to realize that we do have mental models constructed, but we need to be constantly challenging and evaluating them and combining them with the perceptions and the models that other people possess to build increasingly better pictures of the environment and of reality. But that's at a large strategic level. Within a team that's trying to execute on a task or set of tasks toward achieving a goal or objective, we need to have a model that we share that informs how we go about getting the work done. And that affects a lot of different levels. That is very important to have. And it's not that it can't change and evolve, and in fact, it does and it should, but it's something that we do need to have. And that's where leveraging a framework can help. It provides you some out-of-the-box framing and structure for your mental model for how you will get the work done. But that's not to say you can't just create your own. You certainly could. It's the fact that you have the model and it's coherent and shared and agreed and understood. Those are the things that matter, right? In performance, not that you're using Scrum or SAFe or project management or something else. That's just what's popular, doesn't make it right. Okay. We then talked about operating models, which are in a way large mental models for how functions or departments or parts of organizations or companies operate together to deliver value to a customer. The previous session, we talked about operating models. We talked about how to break them down, build them up, construct them, evolve them, monitor them, so that teams and teams of teams have a shared framework, again, mental model for how work is supposed to get done or is currently done. And that helps you also evolve it into the future to solve problems, to make it better, to optimize it, to make it more effective or more efficient or both. So that's the value. Again, the value is having the model as a starting point so that you have a common understanding and a shared picture. Once you have that, then you can shift and adjust. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the next thing, another type of model, which is again back down to the tactical level, the team charter or the team working agreement. This is one model and one construct that we found is useful for a couple of different domains in industries and sectors where they've got teams who they may form, who may be together for a limited duration. I mean, arguably all teams would fit this description, but we mean specifically like for a project or for a goal or for to achieve an objective, and then the team would disband. Some teams may not follow this exact model because they may be long-term, they may be long-standing, they may be almost perennial. Like we just have a team that, like an SRE team in a company or an IT team, they're always there, they always do this. So the mission and the vision for the team doesn't really change over time. Maybe goals and objectives for the near term do, certainly they will. So you can update them. So the framework that we're presenting here absolutely can and should be deviated from. Just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. We're happy to talk to you about if the deviations or the alterations you're considering make sense. Sure they could, go ahead. Happy to give you advice for free and talk about that. And we also run workshops for how to build and construct these. So there's kind of two components to the charter as we're building what we call a team charter. And that's like understanding and clearly being able to express and explain the mission or the vision statement for the team, right? Why is the team being built? What are they expected to do? How should they operate? What's critically important for them? And then goals or objectives that they are expected to accomplish, especially for teams that are going to be together just to achieve those goals or objectives. We need those to be at least clear from an aspirational and intent-based standpoint so that the team can ideate on them and build work plans and schedules around them. It's not to say they don't ever change. Sometimes when we get stakeholders or leaders and team members together and the team members are able to ask questions, they have a lot of good questions and it causes the leaders to reflect and maybe reconsider some of the goals and objectives they were thinking they would have the team pursue. That's a great dialogue and a great outcome. So it doesn't have to just be handed down to the team. There should be room for back and forth iteration so that we can get to a better shared mental model for what it is the team is supposed to do. And that shared model is both from the team and from the leadership and stakeholders that are around the team that are getting it together. Within the team, we also want to then talk about, and typically we start on the left with values, principles, and social, what we call social contracting. So this is more understanding the team members, what their unique skills, capabilities are, their work preferences, who they are, how they like to work, how they best perform work. And it helps the team build a mental model for what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities available to the team through the diversity of its members, right? So as the team encounters different problems or moves through different phases of work, it has a better understanding, right? Getting to know each other of who's on the team and where they can best be leveraged. Not to say that everyone doesn't contribute all the time, but some people clearly are better positioned to contribute more in some circumstances, right? So that's kind of where we want to talk through and build a shared compendium of what those values, principles, and social construct and contract are for how the team operates. We've listed a few things here. There's not really a specific set of criteria for what the team needs to include. They can kind of define this for themselves. And that's part of the fun of running the workshop, is moving through this exercise and helping the team build that social contract together. And that goes into that part of the team charter. And then we can talk about the working agreement much more specifically. The working agreement is what I think most people will be most familiar with. And this is kind of your standard tactical working level agreement where you're agreeing on things like working hours, core days. If you're doing hybrid work schedules where you're going to have some people in office, some people remote, we do want core hours, or if everyone's going to be remote all the time, when are we going to be online and available, especially if we're across time zones, geographies, regions, continents, right? So this is where we're really putting together the nuts and bolts of how will the team work really specifically, tactically. That's why I've got a lot more listed here, and there are many more elements. When will we brief? When will we debrief? How often will that occur? That's based on the domain and the type of work the team's doing, not on whimsy or fancy. It's based on, well, how volatile is the environment? How often do things change? How quickly do we need to be able to react to emerging information? In highly dynamic environments, that needs to be more frequently. In more routine environments, not so frequently. So that's where we want to talk through all of that. agree on, here's where we talk specifically about what tools will we use to communicate, how will communication occur, will it be face-to-face? If it is, how will we document decisions? If it's on Slack, email, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, any other medium, WhatsApp, we want to make sure that that's clearly documented. Everyone has the same expectation, and we're able to reach each other and connect when we need to get work done. Again, going back to team effectiveness drivers, it's all about how do we make the team as effective as possible, as quickly as possible. Instead of waiting to figure all this out naturally, which we can certainly do, might take a year or longer. We want to figure out how to build this as quickly now, immediately. And again, we can always adjust it and update it. The team has the right to update it if they find something isn't working. We just don't want it to be happenstance. Okay, so that takes us to the top part of it. Those are the critical areas. We spend the majority of our time really with the team together on the values, principles, and social contract, and on the working agreement. The working agreement tends to not be quite as long, actually. The values, principles, and social agreements are more intense, I'll say. The working agreement tends to be a little bit easier to work out. And for people that have worked together in a company, there's a lot of norming that they can already rely on within the company and its expectations for how they want to structure and organize. So it's not like we're really starting from absolute zero. We're really leveraging where they already are culturally within the organization. We're just making everything explicit if it's not already. And we're making sure we all agree and we're signing that agreement. Then we also, the bottom, you can kind of adjust as you need to. Different teams need different things. Some of the things that we typically find to be useful is list of members and stakeholders. This facilitates, especially in larger teams or teams of teams, communication channels and knowing who's who and where they are and who the stakeholders are, especially if you need external access to subject matter experts, SMEs. You know who those SMEs are and how to reach them and where they are. And if there are any agreements with them specifically, don't call me on Friday, for example. We know when we can reach out to them and how. So that's a critical piece. And then the other important one is constraints and guardrails. If we have anything that we must or must not do, we want to note that here. And that typically that can come from leaders or from external environmental factors, regulation, right, industry regs. It could also come from internal within the team, like we're trying to adhere to best practices for cyber, or if there's some specific network or system we must use to deliver the final solution. That's what we want to use. We want to note here. That way, as we're building work, product, and backlog and beginning to execute, we can reference this. So the last bit I want to talk about for the charter also is updating. So we have a framework through which we can lead a team or teams of teams through chartering process, and you can create a team of teams charter that is very similar to this. That is, how do we work together as teams of teams, like across a business unit? For those who are familiar with like integrated business operations, IBOs, or other types of team structures, we also want to contract those or charter those. So the same idea, how will these teams work together? What tools, what interfaces, what communication networks, how will that work? Might not have all of the same fields and values on here that we would do for a single team charter, but fundamentally, and certainly at the working agreement level, we want to have that. So once we've built the charter and we've agreed the working agreement, and we're kind of in a good enough draft state, as we move through work, as we brief, debrief, execute work, as we actually begin doing the things that we need to do, we will revisit the charter when we need to, and certainly periodically, to just reevaluate, does this all still work for everyone? And we also want to reevaluate it whenever we change team members, because they get a vote in the charter as well, especially team values, principles, social contract, and working agreement. So we want to reevaluate it with them to make sure that we are all in agreement and have the same mental model as a team. So we reopen it, we reevaluate it, we make adjustments as we need to, and then we continue. So the charter is really not something we do once and we put it on the shelf, or we forget about it and we leave it up there. The charter is a living document that we want to keep fresh all the time. And when team members say, the Thursday afternoon meeting is not really working for me, great. Open the charter, it says Thursday afternoon agreements. What do we need to change that to? Friday morning? Thursday morning? Monday morning? Like, what should we do? Drop it entirely? Just drop it? Okay, that's a discussion for the team to have. And then we make sure that that is reflected in the agreement and the team charter, and we move on. And that is what team charters are for. Thanks for your attention. My name is Chris Alexander from Red Queen Consulting. If you could use a team chartering workshop, or if you have questions about this, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.